They say you only get one chance to make a first impression. Now, would that first impression affect your decision when buying the next guitar? Well, I got to experience two major brands for the first time this year. I want to share my thoughts and compare my first impressions between these two major brands. Why don't you join me? Hey there, I'm Dan, the self-proclaimed Lonely Rocker. Thank you so much for joining me today. So two brands that sort of eluded me over the years were Schecter and ESP LTD. Now I've got two guitars that I want to talk about today. If you've been following my channel, you've seen these guitars before, but today we're going to be talking about this one and this one. So ESP LTD and Schecter. Now these two guitars really have nothing in common in terms of the style of the guitars. Now the thing they do share is the price point. Now both of these guitars are imports, one of them coming from, I believe, Indonesia, and one of them coming from South Korea. These are factories that both brands utilize for their, we'll call it their high-end imports. Both of these companies are American companies. They have high-end shops in the United States. They also make guitars in Japan. These are more of their elite level guitars. And then there's what we call sort of mid-price guitars that land in Canadian dollars somewhere between 1,600 and 1,800 Canadian dollars. I think that's around $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 in US funds, just to give you some perspective. So the Schecter C1 SLS Elite and the ESP LTD Deluxe Phoenix 1000. Now, this guitar, which I have talked about ad nauseum on this channel, this one came from a series of videos that I did where I wanted to spec out a modern styled guitar, something that I didn't really have in my inventory. I compared three different guitars, three really great options, and this one was victorious, and for a number of reasons that I talked about in that video. I will link all of those videos. I'll put them up here somewhere. They'll definitely be in the description if you want to follow along if you did miss that. But it was kind of fun to try out three styles of guitars that I never would have tried out before, and I did choose this one for a myriad of reasons, which was discussed in that video. Now this one, if you did catch this video, this one I got more recently was an impulse buy. I just strolled into a music store and this was, I guess, old stock because it looks like it's a 2020 model. I purchased it in 2024, but it was brand new and it was just sitting on the shelf and it was 50% off. If we're comparing these two guitars, there's different reasons why a guitar will work for you or maybe not work for you, but it should be noted that this one was ordered brand new. This one being brand new, but looked like it was old stock, bought at a sale. So we're not even starting on a level playing field here, but this was my first impression ever with a Schecter. This was my first impression ever with an ESP LTD. Now, there's going to be a twist to this story and perhaps a little moral to the story. So if you stick around, I'm going to share that at the end of the video. So if you have been following along, I got this guitar, I don't know, maybe 10 months ago now, I'm losing track, and was really, really excited about this guitar because, again, it was something very different than anything that I currently own. Again, modern spec, a big reason really is the pickups. You got the Fishman Fluence Moderns. I never owned a guitar with active pickups before. I come from a more classic rock, progressive rock background, so it was not something I ever really wanted, but you know, I've been experimenting with higher gain tones recently, so I thought it would be great to have a guitar that sort of has that extra gear. So that was really attractive to me. You know, you got nice appointments like the hip shot bridge, the compensated nut here. Now the tuners. Actually, before I get to that, look at the back of the guitar. I mean, just the whole contours on this guitar, the finish, everything, beautiful top, matching headstock, just a lot of great things going with this guitar. The first problem that I had, and I did a whole video about that, and I will link that up here somewhere, it will be in the description, was the problems that I had with the tuners. And not to spoil that other video, but it seems the consensus about the Schecter tuners was split. Some of you own multiple Schecters, never had a problem, and some of you have had similar problems or other problems with the tuners that I had. I'll give you a little sampling of what was happening with mine. So that was a bit of a disappointment because I wanted this guitar to be a rock solid recording machine. I had planned to tune it down to drop C and just sort of keep it there because I was moving one of my other guitars up and down. I thought, hey, as you start to add guitars to your inventory, especially in a studio setting, it's good to have different guitars to basically handle different jobs. So, but my overall impression with this guitar at first was very favorable. And then I did a follow-up, and one thing that YouTubers can be guilty of is a bit of euphoria when they get a new piece of gear. And I want to be as honest as humanly possible here on this channel. And, you know, for this channel to be interesting, I need to get my hands on more and more gear. And I'm fortunate that I'm developing relationships with more and more brands. But it should be noted that I purchased both of these guitars. So this never really is influenced by my relationships, because this channel wouldn't be of any use to any of you if I was lying about gear that I didn't like. So I only feature gear that I do like. And I loved this guitar when I pulled it out of the box and started playing it. But then the problem started with this guitar, and big problem was tuning, partly because of the tuners here, and some other reasons which I will discuss in a second. But first impression, love this guitar, but my interest in this guitar started to wane a little bit, and I will get to that in a second. Now, to contrast that, my first impression ever with an ESP LTD Phoenix 1000, this was the ultimate impulse buy. I literally was not shopping, just popped into a store. They were having a sale, and this was like 50% off. And judging by the serial number, this was made in 2020, just before they switched to stainless steel. So likely this has nickel frets on it, though they're very polished, very shiny. So I can't confirm that just yet. But really had no expectations about this guitar. I didn't put it through its paces like I did this one. It was just, I felt it quickly, didn't even plug it in, and I brought it home. I have to say, out of the box, I absolutely love everything about this guitar. Doing a direct comparison now, and like I said, this may not be fair, but this is my first impression with these two brands. There's not one thing about this guitar that I don't like. The neck, I discovered, is the perfect neck for me. I don't know what they call this one, but I've talked about in previous videos how I don't like a finished neck. I prefer more of a natural finish. This is a fully finished neck, which goes against things I've said in the past. The neck profile on this thing just really sits nicely in my hand. The offset nature of this guitar, being the first offset guitar that I've ever owned, was a little strange at first, but this neck is just so comfortable. Now that is a personal thing. But if we start to get into the features of this guitar and the reliability of this guitar has been rock solid in terms of tuning. I haven't even got it set up, because when you buy a guitar at a retailer, a lot of them will offer a free setup. This one has actually been set up twice. And this one, I just set it up myself. I cleaned it up, put some new strings on it, tuned it up, and it has been so reliable since I got it. I mean, number one, I love these pickups. The Seymour Duncan Custom, it's sort of a higher output passive pickup, and the Fat Cat is kind of like a P90. Plus, you've got coil split for the humbucker, so you get a whole range of tones. So it's a really, really versatile guitar, and I found that it's just sat well in a lot of different types of music. I've used it for heavier tracks, more bluesy stuff, cleans, and everything like that. So it's got a really, really good range on it. You can almost get telly tones with a single coil here, which is kind of interesting with a guitar that looks like this. The fit and finish on this thing is just flawless. And like I said, considering it was old stock, there was a little minor dent on the back. That was it. Didn't even break the finish. But, you know, from the nut, the tuners on here, which are ESP branded tuners, so it's not like any third party. Love the modern guitars with the volute on the back. Gibson, are you listening? You got to start doing that. And overall, this guitar just really does it for me. And I've used it in almost every video since I got it, and it's in my hands all the time. So I think on a head-to-head between these two guitars, my first impression was the ESP LTD wins. Now, I don't want to hate on the Schecter. I'm really struggling with this guitar because I really wanted to love this thing. I mean, just look at this thing. It's a beautiful guitar, and it just feels really nice in my hands. It's got a really small neck on it. The neck on this one, a little bit more meat on it. Still very comfortable. This one has a very, very, very small neck on it. And I almost feel like it moves a little bit. And I've talked to a number of players about that. Some people don't like that. Some people say it's not a big deal. Again, that's a personal thing. But the main concern I have with this guitar is that it hasn't been so rock solid in terms of tuning. and I almost sold it. I actually took pictures of it and I put it up. I was about to put it up on the local, resale site, and I didn't. Through discussion with a friend of mine and the person who I actually bought this guitar from, who I still trust, decided that we're going to give this another chance, and this is why. I had some tuning issues and the tuners sucked. So I rectified that by putting these Goto locking tuners on them, which are great. And you know what? Changing a tuner on a guitar, tuners on guitar, it's something that I would do sometimes anyways, just to get the ones that I want. So that was an extra couple $100 that I had to spend. That ultimately affects the price point of this guitar. But these are great tuners and I was excited to put them on there. And so that was one thing I did to rectify that. Now I had this guitar set up properly before. And when I changed the tuners, I put a capo on to hold the strings in place, but that failed miserably and I just restrung the guitar with the same strings. And to be fair to this guitar, I obviously put the setup out of whack by doing that, obviously at the tension on the neck and everything like that, because I'm having tuning issues again. And I want to be fair to this instrument because I want to love this. And I think I have to be fair to it because I think to take off all the strings and put them back on and not to set up the guitar properly again is probably not fair to this particular guitar. But going on first impressions though, as they say, you only get that one chance to make a first impression. So far, the ESP LTD Phoenix 1000 is probably the best experience I ever had with a new guitar, considering that this only cost me about 900 Canadian dollars, which was half price. And it's been an absolute workhorse here in the studio. I love everything about it. I love the way it plays, and it's got me rethinking my needs in terms of these hands over here. I mean, I have guitars that I've used for years. I mean, my number one, you've seen it on the channel many times, the Gibson Howard Roberts Fusion. That will always be my number one. And I have a couple other Gibsons. I have a Sir Classic T Deluxe Limited, which is, I just absolutely love that guitar, and they're just have a permanent place in my heart. But I need those workhorse guitars, the guitars that are just going to get it done. And I really opened my mind to the imports, which is not something that I've ever done before. And if you've shied away from this level of guitar, if you're used to playing, more expensive guitars, these are definitely an option to me. A friend of mine said, why are you buying cheap guitars? Well, they're not cheap guitars in the sense that they're not budget guitars. They're cheaper because yes, they were made overseas, but they're very well-crafted guitars. And I think with CNC machines, they're taking guitars to a higher level much easier than before. Obviously, there's a bit of labor involved in really taking these guitars to the finish stage. But it's really been an eye-opener for me because this guitar, I would love to get myself another Phoenix. But that being said, I asked that question at the beginning, if your first impression is not so great, well, will that prevent you from buying another guitar from that same brand, or should it? Well, a funny thing happened. This thing suddenly arrived. This is the Schecter Solo 2 Custom. This is their Les Paul ripoff. And one thing that I was thinking of doing was selling this Schecter and buying another Phoenix. But when I was in the Netherlands, got to hang out with my good friend John Simons. Been a number of videos about that. He recently got one of these and I got to play it. And I have to say, I was really impressed. I love the neck on here. In fact, I think I like it a bit better than the one on this Schecter here. It's probably closer to what we have here on the ESP, where it's just a little bit bigger. It is, what's really nice about this, you've got sort of the gloss finish, but it's sort of brushed to a satin finish here on the neck, so you don't have the full gloss on the back. I'm going to do a full video about this guitar, so I don't want to get into all the details, but I've had this guitar for about a week now, and I had a setup done in store, and I've just been ripping on this thing for the last week. It's staying in tune, which is really important, obviously. Problem I had with this guy. We've got the Schecter branded tuners on here as well, and so far they haven't been doing the things that these ones did. So far, so good. And really the moral to this story, I think, is that every guitar is different. Every guitar, even if it's the same model, you got to play the guitars in this day of online shopping. Now, a lot of good retailers, I'll mention like Sweetwater, which has nothing to do with this video, but I am an affiliate. I know a lot of people buy guitars on Sweetwater and they have a great return policy. By the way, if you want to click my affiliate links in the description, helps the channel, appreciate that. But again, they have nothing to do with this video, but I do know that they have a good return policy. When possible, getting into store to play the guitars. There's just so many different nuances about the guitar that have to be right for it to feel good in your hands. And the only way to know that is to play it. And sometimes you need a little bit of time with it because, like I said, I reviewed this one and I gave it a real positive review. I talked about the things I thought could be better, and I did talk about the tuners early on. But as time went on, my feeling about the guitar changed, so I did another video about it. And as I will continue to do in this channel, I want to be as open and as honest as I can if I discover new things. So, but when I tried this guitar and it just felt right, I wasn't scared by the fact that maybe I didn't have the best experience with the first Schecter, because I know Schecter makes a great guitar, and maybe this was a lemon, maybe it just needs another setup and it'll be perfect. I wasn't sure. And, you know, first impressions certainly are important and for a lot of things. But if you're in the market for a guitar and if there's something specific that you want, it just goes to show it's so important to play the guitar. Spend some time with the guitar to make sure it's right for you. And if you're dealing with a good retailer and you have the ability to return guitars, I do never recommend abusing that privilege, because that's not a good thing to our retailers. If we want to keep the prices fair, we want to get good guitars and keep them. But if it's just not right for you and you want to exchange it for something else, certainly that's something that you can do. Anyways, I would love for you to share some of your experiences, some of your thoughts on this topic. I mean, there's so many choices out there today for guitar players. It really, truly is an amazing time to be a guitar player, and with so many different brands and, you know, different price points from some major brands, Schecter and ESP are really two very good examples of that. So anyways, would love to hear from you. That's what the comment section is for. And if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And while you're down there, well, I did talk about my problems with the Schecter, so I'm gonna pop a video right here if you want to check it out. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll, and I'll catch you in the next one.